Hey guys, it's your favorite Dynamite here, and yes, I did change the title of the story, and I might go back to doing stuff like this. So without further ado, let's begin. Last time we left off, Jazz had immediately snatched up his baby girl, Jury, and simply drove off, but Tarn gave chase, and we are still in the Grand Senora Desert, where Jazz is pretty much trying to get away as fast as he can. And Jury is inside looking like, dude, why are we running? We could easily take him. However, Jazz simply states that he's not running. He's just luring him along. To which Jory says, what do you mean? And to which he says, I'm not fighting him in a public area, babe. To which he says, oh, yeah. My bad. So Tarn, trying to keep up here, starts utilizing his cannon. And believe it or not, the first 3 shots actually miss. But the 4th shot is able to knock Jazz out of his vehicle mode. And so Jazz, in a slick move, actually grabs Jory in the same way Bumblebee did to Sam and tosses her into the sand, with Jory saying, you better win or else. And this is where Tarn pretty much just comes in rolling and starts blasting. You know, he just pulls up, just starts blasting, spraying everything he has from his 2 fusion cannons at Jazz. However, Jazz does the same thing he did against Brawl, except he just has to leap over one of the blasts and land on him. However, Tarn transforms and slams him into the ground and begins beating his face in, stating that he was always too predictable. And then Jazz says, predict this, and actually lands a super strong thunder punch on Tarn, then follows up with a mean thunder bazooka, landing square in Tarn's chest and begins to crack his armor. Tarn is then thrown back. However, he utilizes Mirage's hooks to try and grab Jazz. However, Jazz utilizes Shockwave in order to block it and sends Tarn flying, then follows up with 3 Hydro Cutters, clearly pissed off at him. Into which Jury is like, yeah, get him, babe. Show him how it's done. However, she also notes that Jazz is visibly pissed here, and Tarn can see it as well. And he says, you're fighting like your life depends on it. You're fighting with more aggression. Are you mad that I absorbed your friends? Mad that I took them from you? Oh, please, it was going to happen anyway. So Jazz pretty much lets Tarn fire, but he utilizes an aquasphere and pretty much collects all the energy from the blast and puts it on Tarn. And this causes Tarn an immense amount of pain. Keep in mind, he's swirling in his own energy blast while being condensed. However, Jazz doesn't let up. He charges up a super cannon and blasts the bubble wide open, sending Tarn flying into the ground. But then he comes down with a lightning axe. This is a kill shot. Jazz has full bloodlust in his optics. However, he is shot in the chest and sent sprawling back by Stinger. And the rest of the KSI army begins to basically appear at this point. Stinger opens fire again, but Jazz utilizes a shockwave to block it. However, the rest of the KSI drones begin to come in, and they begin to pretty much overwhelm Jazz's defenses. So Jory pretty much steps in with her feng shui eye, and it begins to glow, swirling around both her and Jazz in an incredible energy. And she utilizes this to not only absorb it, but then blast it as well, giving them enough time to disappear. Tarn manages to get up, and he is absolutely pissed he needed to be saved, and even grabs one of the drone's heads and crushes it. And this is where other Black Dragon members do begin to, come out and speak with him, such as Cabal, asking him if he's okay. And this is where Tarn simply looks at him, obviously with a lot of malice and stuff, and simply tells him that he needs to go to the doctor immediately. We're changing our plans. And this is where we would go to Plumber HQ. Kano is being locked up just from, the last part and everything, along with Barricade. And this is where Air Razor begins to taunt them both, stating that, you thought you guys would actually be more difficult, but you guys got caught on your first attack. Kind of sad if you ask me. And this is where Ben and Kevin also chime in, and they also do wonder if Jazz is actually done with this investigation. However, Gwen comes running in, right? And she says, guys, we need to get to Duncan's garage now. Jury just called me. Jazz has been hurt, and hurt badly. But this is where the time we get to Duncan's garage. It's in the, I would probably say, the border area of Los Santos, or, you know, more or less the inner city area. And Duncan's pretty much just working on Jazz while he's in his more humanistic form, because it's a lot easier. And it says, dude, you really got yourself into this kind of situation? To which Jory says, well, kind of didn't have a choice. It was either that or he was just going to follow us to probably a more public area. So you two just get into trouble all casually. And this is where Jazz simply states, you're one to talk. And this is where Duncan actually, like, twists a component, or at least a component in Jazz's organ, causing him a little pain here, and he just simply laughs at it. And so Jazz does manage to fix him up. Sorry, Duncan does manage to fix Jazz up pretty easily. However, this is where Ben, Kevin, and Gwen show up, asking him, like, hey man, you alright? We heard what happened, and, you know, just checking on you. And so when Jazz is done and pretty much just closes his body up, so, you know, his organs ain't exposed and everything, he tells him no, he's not fine. He just fought somebody that had the speed of Sideswipe and the grapple hooks of Mirage. He's not okay with that. But Kevin simply states, but you got a plan to stop him, and I bet you got a plan to permanently rip his head off, right? To which he says, he's not Optimus, but yes, he is going to kill him. But right now, they were talking about some sort of high energy level. And so he looks to Jory and says, New York? To which he says, yeah, New York. Pack up and let's go. But this is where we go over to the laboratory. Tarn's laboratory. And this is where he's working with the Black Dragon scientist, Silas. Yes, I'm adding him into the story. And he says, is everything ready? And this is where we see a map of the Forbidden Lands. I know it's not the Forbidden Lands map, but I'm just kind of using it for right now. And he says, yes, we have everything ready. And you will have the energy source you require. And Tarn says, good, very good. We then pan over to the Big Apple, New York City, the glorious place, the home place of every hero imaginable. I mean, obviously, come on, it's literally the home of, you know, the Fantastic Four. Oh, how great, right? The Avengers and everything. And so this is where we see Gwen, Kevin, and Ben, and Duncan pretty much get out of their car, while Jory steps out of Jazz. And this is where they pretty much state, or Duncan states that, okay, so who are we looking for? We're teaming up the Fantastic Four, the Avengers, who? To which she says, or Jory says, excuse me, she should be here any minute. I mean, it shouldn't take her this long, right? And this is where Jane Foster Thor appears and says, sorry, she's late. She was handling an ogre in Alfheim. To which Jazz actually steps up to her and introduces himself. However, she simply stops him, stating that he knows who he is and all the good he's done, and she's actually welcome to have him along. However, Jazz also states, you should also ask your friend not to be sneaking around him, and actually shoots out a powerful lightning blast, which hits Iron Man dead square in the chest, sending him sprawling across the street. And people begin to gather around and look in shock, expecting a fight when Iron Man gets up, but this is where they hear stand down. And this is where Sam Wilson, Captain America, comes flying down. Now, if you guys don't really understand here, it's obvious that I'm basing this Avengers team as pretty much the new Avengers, considering that Marvel and Transformers have been connected for quite a while. And this is where Jazz and Sam pretty much just, you know, shake hands, asking each other how they're doing. And Kevin simply looks at him like, dude, you know Captain America? Like, is there anyone you don't know or don't have a good relationship with? Matter of fact, how do you know him in the first place? And this is where Jazz simply states that Sam was an old friend from the military. He worked with us in Nest for quite a while until, well, you know, forming the Avengers and moving to New York City and stuff like that. But hey, it is what it is. So after everyone getting to know each other and meeting the rest of the team in Avengers Tower, they begin to simply discuss everything. Meanwhile, let's talk about the other Avengers. Obviously, we have Miss Marvel, Nova, and Miles Morales Spider-Man, along with Vision. So 3 new members plus 4 veteran members, I should say. And Miles is actually ecstatic and even asks Jazz for an autograph, with him being one of his favorite Autobots as well. And he says that he does apologize for what humanity did to, the Autobots and stuff. To which he says, while his leader may not say it, he does appreciate the humans, sentiment and the fact that he is willing to forgive them, obviously. However, Vision simply states something. What brings you here after so long? And to which Jazz begins to explain that Tarn's looking for something, a powerful energy source from the Forbidden Lands. And this is where Captain America says, oh yeah, the Forbidden Lands. A lot has happened since you saved the world from itself, essentially. You see, Unicron's presence, or Unicron has always been on Earth for years, but there was a part of him that was already up and filled with life. And he begins to explain that the Forbidden Lands had creatures that were thought to be extinct, but thriving here like it was absolutely nothing. Creatures of unimaginable power. However, there was also something else. This had been found by mutants and their leader, Magneto, forming a country where mutants can be safe haven from everyone. And the monsters, they keep away from it. They almost protect it, if you will. But this is because they may be on top of something that is a very powerful source of power. And this is where Iron Man states, so what's the plan? You expect to just go up there and ask what the energy source is and can you see it? To which Jazz simply states, yeah, I don't see why not. I can handle pretty much anything this planet's throwing me so far. And if Tarn wants it, that means we gotta get it. Think you're ready for another adventure, Ben? And this is where Ben says, you know me. Got the Omnitrix, you got the powers. We're gonna make this look easy. So after preparing themselves for, I would probably say a couple hours, the team that goes are obviously Ben, Kevin, Gwen, Duncan, Jazz, and Jury, along with Captain America and Iron Man, as well as Vision. I'm going to add Vision to this. So the 9 of them are essentially going in this submarine, and well, they begin to hit the Great Sea, or at least, the sea in general. And it's calm at first. And this is where Jazz begins to sense something different. And so he hops out the submarine, carefully of course, and turns into his Legiocrist form. And this is where he begins to tread the waters very carefully before flat out swimming alongside the submarine. And this is where Iron Man states he's not picking up any energy levels on his schematics. Maybe he can. It is possible that it doesn't resonate with human technology. To which Jury says, yeah, that makes sense because her eye's not picking up on anything either. And this is where, they kind of do conversate for a little bit. Duncan does talk about, man, if this trip could get any more boring, he would have just stayed at home and maybe just chilled with Jeff, DJ, and Courtney. And this is where Kevin says, really? Chill out at home? Maybe the Black Dragons would have gotten you by now. I mean, sure, you're just out there living your best life, but what's to stop them from coming for you again? To which Duncan says, hey, I can handle myself, but this is where the water begins to get violent for some reason. Almost as if something's controlling it, commanding it even, as the waves simply crash against everything around it, clashing against each other, whirlpools begin to form, and this is where Jazz begins to feel it. Something's there. And he actually stops for a minute, and this is where the submarine actually bumps against him. And to which Gwen notes that if he stopped, then there's something here. And this is where Ben simply states, oh, finally. We can finally have some action. Been bored down here for a hot minute. And to which Captain America simply states, this isn't a joke. What's going on, actually? To which Vision simply states he's not sensing anything. But there might be life down here. To which Jury, also using her senses as well, states that, well, if he stopped, then there's something cautious. To which she taps the glass, and Legiocrist gives her a look that says, hold on a minute. Something's definitely here. And this is where he begins to swim around them, actually moving naturally on purpose. And this is where a tentacle with a maw on it tries to snatch him, but he moves out of the way and blasts it with electricity. And this is where Gwen simply states, there it is, there he is, everything's now coming together. It makes sense. The mutant nation of Genosha or the Forbidden Lands is the mutant nation of Genosha, but we may have a bigger problem, as now Gwen is fully able to see it. It's Nakarkos, an elder dragon, a beast of the sea and sometimes even land. And the person on top of it is someone very familiar, to where he says, "Trespassers, you and your creature will meet a brutal end at the hands of Namor." And this is where we're going to leave it off here, you guys. Please comment down below, like, and subscribe and share with your friends. This is Legendary Grimlock, and I hope you guys have a blessed day. And please let me know if you guys like the visualization of the story. Peace.